How are you today? The improved package has arrived. We're having it fitted in time for FP1. Have a look at the factory report.
Well, welcome along everybody then to round number 9 at Silverstone for the British Grand Prix, our home race, and hopes will be high for a good result here, carrying on the trend from the last few races. We hope to be competitive with Red Bull. We're keeping that gap pretty steady to Red Bull, so I'm hoping that we can challenge them once again here. And if we continue this upward trend, we can hopefully challenge them towards the end of the season for that third place in the Constructors. But with a couple of little upgrades here then, we've improved the reliability of the internal combustion engine and the gearbox. This should mean, hopefully, we don't have to take another penalty by adding another engine into circulation. But we'll see how that turns out. It was about a 30% reduction in increase in reliability, so that should definitely get the job done there. In terms of performance here, it's a track that suits our cars in some places, and the mid-speed aero corners, it definitely doesn't. So if we can get onto the back of the Red Bulls, and that 7th and 8th will be the minimum target for myself and Perez, I'm sure. But looking like a pretty dry weekend for the moment. And as we go on to qualifying now then, we're just coming to the end of our opening lap. And practice went well, did all the objectives nice and easy. So that's another haul of points to hopefully make a nice big upgrade next time out. But as we come around the final corner then to cross the line on our opening lap of the qualifying session, we're nicely into the 31s and provisionally P6. But as we get to the end of the session, it's actually going to drop us to P10. But we're only a couple of attempts behind our teammate Perez, and the new difficulty definitely working out. We're at the right levels now, I think, in terms of the AI difficulty, so it should be good competition between me and Perez. There's only a few points between us in the championship anyway. But as we get into Q2 now then, unfortunately, and you'll pretty quickly gather what this means, I'm just going to let you sit back and relax and enjoy the sounds of our fastest lap from qualifying. So we crossed the line to be provisionally second, but it actually ends up leaving us in 11th place as we come to the end of the session here. And as we come into Magnussen Bates, we're trying a little bit too hard because we're already down on the lap, and we desperately want to get through to Q3, but we hit the grass. The car spins at around 150 miles an hour, and that's a pretty terminal accident, and probably the biggest one we've had this year. And really shows from the external view here the new damage model this year, which is pretty extensive. Would have expected to lose the rear wheel there if I'm picking holes in it, but anyway, it means that we're going to start P11. It actually turned out P10 after a penalty was applied to someone above us, so hopefully we can have a good race into the points from there.
You seem particularly excited for this one, Ant. Is there something you want to tell me?
Oh, just looking forward to it, Crofty. It's always a very special atmosphere, and also I started karting in the late 1980s, and I was here for that epic race in 1986 with Mansell and Piquet fighting each other right here at my home Grand Prix. So coming back to Silverstone always means a lot. And looking at the crowd today, it's clear that none of that spirit has been lost. And also, we just have such a fantastic field this year. Some very close competition and conditions that should make for some great racing. I can't wait.
So as we're on the formation lap here, as I say, we've been promoted to 10th. I think it was Verstappen that actually got a penalty out of the top 10. For some reason Verstappen was starting on the soft tyres. If it was Verstappen that got the penalty, he would have got through to Q3, so he should be starting on the tyres he qualified in. So maybe he did have the foresight to qualify on the soft tyres, I don't know. There's going to be a one-stop race, providing nothing strange happens. There is a bit of rain on the radar for the end of the race. Whether it will come in time for the checkered flag, I don't know. But we're going to stay on target as though we're doing a one-stop. It's going to be the super softs for around about 10 to 12 laps, and then onto the soft tyres for the remainder of the race. But hopefully we can have a good start here. We've got Hulkenberg alongside us, Grosjean just ahead. Cars that we really should be getting ahead of, because we don't want to let the front pack get away too quickly. As we're underway for round number 10 in Great Britain then. Pretty average start. Grosjean has a pretty bad start ahead of us, but we a little bit cautious into turn 1 here. And a little bit of contact with Lance Stroll, but fortunately we're okay, and we're going to dive down the inside now of Grosjean and Hulkenberg, and we just about get clear of the Renault in time for turn 3, and we're now onto the back of Max Verstappen then, who has also made a cracking start, who was just behind us, but struggling for traction on those soft tyres, and it's going to make it pretty easy pickings down into the left and right hander, and we're onto the back of Massa, really harrying him at this point. And you can see Perez just ahead of Massa there. That's who we want to be on the back of, because of course India should hopefully be a close fourth in terms of car performance here this afternoon. So we don't want to get stuck behind the midfield for too long, as we can't Maggots and Beckett's here. It's not really the place to be looking to overtake, not unless you have a huge speed advantage or you're incredibly stupid. But we just keep it in line, nice and patient, pull out of the slipstream of Massa, and such is our excess speed on this Mercedes engine. For some reason, even though it's the same power unit in the back of that Williams, means that we're easily able to move up to 7th place. So as we move on to about halfway through the next lap, we've caught the back of our teammate Sergio Perez, and once again looking for a way through. He's being held up a little bit by Ricciardo ahead. Of course we're ahead of, we run massively wide there. Hopefully Charlie won't be on our case in terms of that, although Silverstone is generally a good track for running wide. They do allow it in most cases, as long as you don't overtake off the track, I think. But we don't want to be getting into that argument after the race last weekend. But as we move on to the back of Perez and alongside, he squeezes us right up along the left hand side, and we outbrake him massively into the right hander and stay well ahead as we come down to the final couple of corners, and that is P6. We've got Ricciardo just ahead of us. You can see just how close Perez did squeeze us here. As I say, he left us plenty of room on the left side, but as soon as we got alongside, he just continued to squeeze every little inch. But in all credit to him and to the AI this year, they fight incredibly hard, but 9 times out of 10 they don't make contact. So it's definitely a fair but firm fight from them this year. But we're onto the back of Ricciardo just a lap later then. For some reason the Red Bull's really struggling here. This should be one of their power tracks, really, considering their downforce. And we again get incredibly close to the AI and force Ricciardo out onto the curb. He tried to hold it around the outside for as long as he could, but had to back out of it to avoid losing traction on that curbing. And you can see here from the external shot again just how close we got when battling with the AI. We got the inside line. Ricciardo much later onto the brakes, tried to hold it around the outside, but just managed to force him out onto the curbs, and he had to back off and concede the position. So we've got Lewis Hamilton just ahead of us now, a couple of laps later. He is on the soft tyres, so we should have a slight pace advantage, but of course that Mercedes car is still a lot quicker than ours. And Perez, as you can see behind, has now got past Ricciardo. So we're now the third quickest team essentially. We're past the Red Bulls, and anything beyond this point is a bonus. So we just want to hold the position, make sure the tyres go the distance, and as we move on to lap 8 now, we have lost a little bit of time to Hamilton. We pulled a bit more of a gap behind to Perez, and we're going to come in a couple of laps early for our stop, and this causes the first of 2 problems in this race. Is that Perez is now waiting for us because we decided to make a pit stop a few laps earlier than scheduled. Unfortunately, the AI couldn't work that out. Perez came in as well, so he was delayed a little bit, which I'm not too bothered about because you always want to beat your teammate, but of course it's not great for the team in terms of points. But as we come out the pits here then, you can see how crucial it was to get past the Saubers, just to have the free air on the fresh tyres, and Verline pushed us pretty tough, but we managed to just muscle him out and get on with our day. And later in the lap then, we've caught the McLaren of Van Dorn, who's yet to stop on the super softs, and again nowhere to go. We don't want to waste a second on these tyres in our bid to catch Hamilton, and we somehow squeeze our way through on the outside. So many moments in this race where it could have been game over. It could have been a terminal, huge accident. But fortunately, we managed to get through all those situations unscathed, and as we move to the end of that lap now, onto the beginning of lap 11, you can see Hamilton's come out of the pits just ahead of us, and he's come out on medium tyres, which I was a little surprised about because these soft tyres that I'm on should go to the end theoretically. So Hamilton obviously playing it safe or knowing something we don't at this point. But it takes us just half a lap to catch Hamilton. Such is the pace difference and the trouble he's having warming up those medium tyres. As we come out of Maggots and Beckett's, we're right tucked under the rear wing of the Mercedes. We've got DRS as well. We don't know whether to go left or right. We go right and easily make the move stick as we come down into the pit complex then. And Lance Stroll ahead of us and Jolyon Palmer both yet to stop. The 2 cars we need to get past nice and quickly if we're going to scamper away from Hamilton, although by this point on the next lap we've already pulled out a couple of seconds. That Mercedes really doesn't seem to like the medium tyres today. And as we come up onto the rear of Lance Stroll then, we're going to take a look down the inside and we look to shape up Palmer into the chicane at the end of the penultimate corner, but he's going to dive into the pits, as is Stroll, for their one and only stop. And we will now concentrate on trying to pull out a little gap from Hamilton behind. Bottas ahead, I think, is on a 2-stop strategy because he's gone super soft, super soft. So there's a good chance of challenging for a podium here as well if we just keep things steady. But as we move on to lap 18, and unfortunately we've just pushed too hard. We're so desperate to make sure we got that gap on Hamilton, who incidentally has now been overtaken by Verstappen on the medium tyres. It's definitely an issue with Hamilton today. It's not just the tyres that are causing him the issues. But we just pushed so hard that there was no way we were going to get these soft tyres till the end. And the real shame was that it looked like rain was on its way towards the end of the race. It might only be the last 2 or 3 laps, but we couldn't even hold out for that. It was a decision of just losing all the advantage we had, getting slower and slower, or making that choice to just go on to another set of soft tyres and making it a sprint to the finish in the hope that the rain didn't come too soon. So we dive in, put the soft tyres on. We're going to lose a few positions. I think we're going to go down to 8th as we come back out, just behind our teammate Perez. Well, I say just, we're about 12 seconds behind. And we just got to get the hammer down now. I mean, the clouds are looming, but at the moment there's no rain. And as long as we can sort of keep the advantage we should have on these tyres, which is about 1.5 to 2 seconds a lap, we should catch Perez by the end of the race. But we've almost certainly thrown away the chance to hold on to that 4th place ahead of Verstappen and Hamilton. Just purely going too hard on the tyres, really. And as we move on to lap 23, you can see the rain is now starting to come, and we're already losing a little bit of grip. We have managed to halve that gap to Perez to 6 seconds, so we've stuck by what we needed to do of taking 1.5 to 2 seconds a lap out of him. But with the rain now, it's going to complicate things a little bit. Whether we can keep up that rate of gain whilst the rain is coming down and we're slipping and sliding about, I don't know. But as we come towards the end of the lap, I wasn't sure about intermediates, but as soon as I saw Perez dive into the pits, I was pretty certain it was the right time to do so. But I also didn't really think, because I was copying Perez, but of course Perez is my teammate. And this means that we are once again double stacked. For the second time in the race, the Force India crew have to service us one after the other. And there's a little hold up for us. It's not quite as much as Perez was held up earlier in the race, but it did cost us 2 or 3 seconds. And it means that we exit just behind Grosjean when we probably wouldn't have done. And you can see Perez going through turn 3 there. So, still a chance to catch our teammate, but it's been made a lot tougher now by the fact that we're now both on the same tyres effectively. Any advantage we have is going to be, you know, very negligible in comparison to the second and a half we were gaining. Soft versus medium. And Grosjean is also on the medium tyres, so he hasn't actually stopped for inters yet. And this was the confirmation that the change was the right thing to do, because Grosjean really tiptoeing about, and why he didn't go in on that lap before I don't know. But it means that we get past him nice and easy, and we can set about trying to catch Perez in the 2.5 laps we've got left. But it's going to be incredibly difficult as we try and get up to speed on these tyres anyway. But we are handed a little bone as we come round the right-hander, and you see on the right-hand side there, Sebastian Vettel pulled off to the side of the road with a mechanical issue. And it means it's going to promote us to 7th, and that is where we're going to stay as we come through the final few corners then at the end of the race. You can see Bottas just ahead, you can see Ricciardo and Perez battling it out just a couple of corners ahead. But we needed another 4 or 5 laps really to regain our 4th place, and it was all lost on our tyre wear. But still, crossing the line in P7th, it's not a bad result. It's still some points in the board. It was a very difficult race. We made completely the wrong strategy calls really, as Kimi Raikkonen is standing atop the podium once more and is really looking unstoppable in the Drivers' Championship this year. Raikkonen, another win, must be 4 or 5 now for the Finn, and in what is probably the most unrealistic element of this game. But Perez does come home in that 4th place we should have got, so some more great points for us. We do lose ground a bit to Red Bull as Ricciardo is in 5th. A great podium for Verstappen, and Bottas just ahead of us, also making the mistake of doing 3 stops. And Jolyon Palmer, another point. Worst game ever. Incredibly unrealistic. But all in all, considering we're still ahead of Perez, considering we probably made a massive mistake on strategy that race, I'm pretty happy with where we are. And as we approach the mid-season point, it sure is going to be a titanic scrap between us and Red Bull, and between me and Perez ourselves. You can see Raikkonen there has now opened up a 21-point lead over Hamilton. But both Ferrari and both Mercedes drivers are still technically in a chance of winning this title. So it's going to go down to the wire. So it'll be pretty interesting to see how that turns out, as well as our battle. But as we look at the constructors, which we will do in a minute, I think I was just highlighting there how many points Palmer has compared to Hülkenberg. The most unrealistic game ever. But it means that we stay around about 50 points behind Red Bull. It's a closable gap, but it's going to be incredibly tough. But considering our car is still on paper quite a bit worse than Red Bull's, hopefully we can make some good improvements, because we're already fighting them and our car's supposed to be worse. So it's not going to take many improvements to take us above them. And if we can maybe get onto the podium on a regular basis for the last 5 or 6 races, then there's a real chance of overturning that. And that would be a huge turn up for the books, because I really didn't think we would be up there with the top 3 teams as quick as we are. But all in all, it was a great race. Disappointed, of course. I think a podium or at least 4th was on the table. The mistake was just going too hard on the tyres once we got past Hamilton. I just had this horrible feeling that he would come back at us, so I was trying to get as big a gap as possible. But that just meant that we burnt up the tyres within sort of 5 or 6 laps, and it was apparent very quickly that we were not going to make the checkered flag on that set. And then the rain was the spanner in the works. I have a feeling we could have caught Perez and maybe even Ricciardo if it had been dry to the finish. But alas, it was not. Now, I hope you guys are still enjoying this series. I'm going to try and make it a bit more regular than it's been the last few weeks. So tune in hopefully at some point early next week for the next episode. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button, leave a comment. And if you are new to the channel, you can always subscribe as well. But as always, thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you again next time.